So I'm gonna start. I think it's 10 now. Yes, as you can see, the presentation is called Politeness. So, well, thanks for coming on a Sunday morning actually. Today is Sunday. Sunday morning. I know you didn't party a lot yesterday. Maybe you did. So thanks for being here. And I'm very glad to be here at the University of Bratislava. So let's start the talk then. I'm gonna be talking about politeness. So what is politeness? I really love this. As you can see in the first image, there is a person asking for help in England. Say wrong. No, that's not the way it should be done. Help. And in the other one, number 2, excuse me, sir. I'm terribly sorry to bother you, but I wonder if you would mind helping me a moment, as long as it's not trouble, of course. So we find this very funny actually, because it's kind of artificial. Of course, if you need help because you are drowning, obviously you don't say the whole thing at all. So, here I have another example of what people sometimes understand as politeness, which is the Gentleman Book of Etiquette and Manual of Politeness. This is not what I'm going to be talking about. So, at least in Spanish, when we use the term politeness, when Spanish is understood as cortesía, a lot of people think about artificial things, unnecessary things, so things that we use and just kind of are a bit fake, because, as the English man you saw before, actually. So, but this is not what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about politeness in linguistics, in pragmatics, to be more precise. So what is polite language, actually? Polite language is something we use on a daily basis to avoid conflict and to live as a society together. So basically, not to be shouting at each other every time, or not to get angry, or politeness, actually to define politeness, you need to wonder about these 3 questions. So how do we interact with others? Why do we choose to say certain things in concrete moments? How do we avoid conflict? Because, for example, not saying thank you could be polite also. So this is... Yeah, I'm gonna be... the study of politeness actually started like 30 years ago, really. This type of politeness in pragmatics. Pragmatics, I think some people didn't come to the presentation yesterday, but pragmatics is the part of linguistics that studies how language is interpreted depending on the context. So the reason why the study of politeness started only 30 years ago is because it always has had this negative implication of artificial, that it is something artificial. That's why I explained at the beginning of the presentation. So, and in 30 years, there have been a lot of books written about politeness, and I wanted to concentrate, to focus on a theory, which is the theory by Brown and Levinson. And but of course, there are multiple theories, so you can find them as well. And Brown and Levinson actually spoke about face in relation with politeness. And face is how we see ourselves and how the other people see us. So when we are in society, even if we are not very social, we always have an image of ourselves and how the people see us. So this is called face, actually. In someone's face, there are 2 sides. One side is negative face, So we want to be free, independent, and we want to do what we want to do. So, and there is a positive phase, actually, which is the desire to be liked, respected, and appreciated by others, which is paradoxical, isn't it? Because it seems to be just the opposite. And I chose this quote by Deborah Tannen. I think it illustrates what I have just said, which is that human beings are always balancing the paradoxical fact that they are simultaneously individuals and social creatures. So we want to be free, we don't want to be imposed on by others, but we love making people feel good as well. So, and feeling good by helping others. So this is it's like a paradox, in my opinion. I'm going to talk about politeness strategies by Brown and Levinson. And politeness strategies is used to save the hearer's face. By face, I mean, for example, if there is a face-threatening act, which is the second thing that I wrote, is something that I do that kind of compromises your face. For example, you're leaving this place, and I would like to live with you, but I need to go to a toilet. So I tell you, oh, can you wait for 5 minutes? Because I need to go to a toilet. I'm taking your freedom from you. So this is kind of, I'm threatening your freedom. And if you say no, you might look a bit unfriendly maybe, not very polite. If you say yes, you might not like it because you wanted to leave. And maybe you don't even like me, for example. So this is a face-threatening act. It's when you do something that compromises the other person's face. Let's see. Oops. So what kind of politeness strategies are there? So there are actually, there are 4 types of politeness strategies. And the numbers indicate that they are more polite. So number 1, from number 1 to number 4. So, oops, this is the way around. So this is the most polite one, which is called off record. Off record means that you don't ask for a favor, but you give hints. For example, if I want you to open the window and I start doing like this, it's very hot in here, isn't it? And you see me, you might get up and open the window, yeah? Or for example, I forgot my pencil. I don't know where it is. And then you see me, oh yeah, I have a pencil, you can use mine, yeah? This is called off record. So, which is the riskiest one, of course, because the person can interpret something completely different. Or maybe you are doing like this because you're hot, but it doesn't make a difference if you open a window. So, it's in the most indirect way of asking for a favor. Then we have negative politeness. For example, could I borrow your pencil? If you say this, you are respecting the other person's freedom. So, kind of, you're not imposing on the other person. The third type of politeness is positive politeness. For example, Tom dear, I need to borrow your pencil. So why is it called positive politeness? Because you are kind of imposing a little bit, but why? Because they're your friends. Because you want to make them feel good. Because maybe if you ask a friend with negative politeness, it might be a bit artificial. Because, yeah, but we're friends. This is not a normal question, so to speak. And then we have on record badly, which are imperatives. So, lend me your pencil. It's not very successful usually, and it depends on the context. So as you can see, it goes from more polite in the first one to the fourth. So some rules that we can understand from these are don't impose. So I'm sorry to bother you, but you're saying you're sorry, and at the same time you give options. You want to finish the class, don't you? So you can say yes, no. Of course, if you say you want to finish the class as a statement is not the same as asking the question. And another rule is that you make A feel good. So I would really appreciate if you could. So if you appreciate, that means that if you do it, I would be glad. And if I'm glad, I make you feel glad because you made me glad. You understand the thing? Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to compare some cultures to see how this works. So Spanish and English. Here we have a question. So, may I have another napkin, please? And in Spanish, one way of saying this is, ¿me trae otra servilleta, por favor? Or can you bring me another napkin, please? Which strategy do you think is more polite? So you can speak maybe between you, would be nice. You're separated. Okay, maybe you might not like it. Well, just think about it for a minute, and we can speak about it. You can speak to the person next to you, maybe. That's more interesting. That's what we do in class, actually. Do you have another microphone, maybe? Do you have another microphone? Only one. Okay. All right, so we can maybe see what your conclusions are. Any volunteers? Yes? Can you speak up because we only have a microphone?
Hi, I think it's probably dependent on the culture.
No, you're right, you're right. I am, when I asked you the question, I'm sorry, I was not very specific. I was trying to make you think using this concept of face and Brown and Levinson's principles. We're going to talk about the whole thing. What I meant is by the principles of, you remember, of record, direct, indirect. Yes, of course, we're going to talk about it a bit later. Sorry, I should have said that before maybe. But what I mean is only if you think about these principles that I described before. So, yes?
Well, I think that the English one is more polite actually, because it leaves a lot more options open to the listener. Because it says, "May I have another napkin, please?" And it means that they can point out what the napkins are, or that maybe they will take them, or
Yeah.
something else will happen. Whereas in Spanish, when me trae, if I say me trae, that means we have to get it from you.
Yes, exactly. So what Joanna said actually is that may gives more options because you're asking for permission. Whereas in Spanish, you are almost giving an order. So, oops, how I done? Shit. Sorry. Let's see. Yeah. Yep. So the English one is indirect because you're asking if you can, and it's negative politeness because you are respecting the person's freedom, aren't you? So may I? You're asking for permission. The other person might say no. Spanish is direct and it's positive politeness. So you might be asking this question because the person is working somewhere, and if you ask this question, it means that you appreciate their work in there. For example, I don't know how to interpret this, but it's positive politeness. Now the question is, is this universal? Is it true? So I'm going to talk about what you said before. Are English people more polite than Spanish people? Well, let's see. So I only found this chart in Spanish. So who speaks Spanish here? Good. So it's 50%, more or less. All right, so we have several languages: English, German, French, Hebrew, Spanish. This was a study conducted with, I think, 700 people from these different nationalities. And they were asked to ask for a favor. And the results are, for example, the thing in black is imperatives. And Spanish people use a lot of imperatives. And Hebrew as well. But if you see English people don't use a lot of imperatives, so it is quite low. In the second case, which is indirect requests, so the dotted part, English uses a lot of indirect requests. For example, I was wondering if you could open the window. It's an indirect request, because you don't say, please open the window. And Spanish, not a lot. And then in white, we have alusiones, which is the hints, the off-record strategy that I spoke about before. So when you give hints, when you start doing like this, because you're very hot. So this is also a way to ask for a favor. And apparently, this is not the most popular way of asking for a favor. If you think about it, it's logical, because the other person might not get it. So, and you can just choose to ignore it. So this is why they say that it's the most polite way of asking for a favor, because it's very easy to decline the favor. I'm going to compare some languages. I might be taking a risk here, because this was taught at a Spanish class with Spanish students with no foreigners. So here we have a lot of nationalities. All right, in Polish, for example, when you say, can you pass me the salt? A Polish speaker or maybe a native speaker might feel this is a stupid question, because of course I can pass you the salt. So I think in a lot of Slavic languages, the verb can expresses an ability. And I think this question can be said. So afterwards, maybe if you're from Poland, you can you can give us some feedback. I think if you say could, it works, but not if you say can. So this is like if you say in English, are you able to pass me the salt? Yes, of course I am. So it's a bit stupid, isn't it? And when they invite you, they might say things like, we might have lunch. So this is what my teacher said in her book. I don't know if it's true, I guess so. But yeah, so we might have lunch sounds a bit strange in English, doesn't it? Now in Chinese, when you say, for example, have you had lunch? The other person is expected to answer something like, yes, I've been so selfish. And what they mean actually is, how are you? I'm okay. So I don't know why in Chinese you ask about food when you want to you want to ask somebody how they are. In Thai, when you say something like, can you pass me the salt? It is a similar case as in Polish. The difference in Thai is that it's even offensive when you say, can you pass me the salt? Because you are questioning the ability the other person has to pass you the salt, so you are automatically assuming they're stupid. So it's more common in Thai to say things like, help me take the salt, instead of, can you pass me the salt? The reason why I choose these examples with the verb can is to show you that this is not really true. That the verb can doesn't always express a permission. And we might make mistakes even if we are being very polite according to our standards of politeness. Now, expressing gratitude is something that I really like, because I think there are a lot of misunderstandings about this. So, these waiters don't say thank you, or she didn't even say or offer to do that because I helped her, or whatever, I don't know. So when do we express gratitude? The Jalungu, which are indigenous Australians, never say thank you. There might be maybe another word that's similar, but not really a real thank you. Why? Because they think that when you do something, you do it because you want to do it. And if you want to do it, what's the point of saying thank you if you want to do it? And when you don't want to do it, it's because you have to do it. And if you have to do it, you don't do it because you want. So there is no point in saying thank you because there's nothing to be, you are forced. You're not doing it because you like the other person. You feel the principle here, more or less? Are they impolite? No, not really, I think. So in Korea, I'm going to give you an anecdote that my teacher explained to me. She actually, I think, a little girl was adopted by French parents, and she came from South Korea. So she was adopted at the age of 4, more or less. And when she went to France, her French parents were very kind of upset with her because she never said thank you, never. It's like, and then she learned after 1 or 2 years. And then when she grew up, like 15 years later, she decided to go to South Korea to meet her biological family. And then they were very upset and sad because she always said thank you to them. So why does it happen? Well, in Korea, you don't say thank you to your family because they love you. And when they do something, it's because they want to do it, generally, for you. And if you say thank you in Korean to a person you love, it might mean that you want to keep a distance because you assume that they are doing something because they are forced to do so, so to speak. You understand this, more or less? So this girl was a bit lost. So when I was little, my French family told me this, and then I come and they tell me that. So there is another anecdote. So my teacher actually told me that a Japanese student at the university in Madrid wrote her a letter. And it was a very correct letter, very formal, as Japanese people are. And then at the end of the letter, there was a sentence that just didn't fit at all. And it was, ayúdeme cuando se lo pida, which is in English, help me when I ask you to. So in Spanish, it sounds as an imposition. It's like, who is this student to tell me that I have to help her whenever she asks me to? Well, she discovered this some years later when she read a paragraph by Matsumoto, who is also a Japanese linguist. And in Japan, when you ask for a favor, you're kind of humiliating yourself because you are not able to do it. And when you ask for help, you are kind of putting the other person on a pedestal. So you kind of feel that they are superior. So what this student was doing actually was complimenting her because she could help her and she couldn't do it herself. So it's another example. I'm going to be talking about language mistakes. So I like this. Say, my friends think I don't want to speak Spanish. How do I say I'm embarrassed? I'm at the end, estoy. So I add one O at the end. Estoy embarazado. Felicidades, felicidades. Embarazado, pregnant. Oops. So this has happened to all of us, I think. So especially in this environment. When we make a grammar mistake, people just laugh or they find it cute, usually. Not everybody, of course, but people don't usually react in a bad way. Or if you make a grammar mistake, for example, I didn't went instead of I didn't go, people just assume that you're trying and they try to be nice. But what happens when we make a politeness mistake? It's not the same, is it? He didn't even say thank you. So why is it different if it's something relative? Well, so politeness isn't understood the same way universally at all. And this is something very important. Because when we judge we do it on our based on our culture. So, and the way we understand politeness is deeply rooted in ourselves, based on our culture. When I mean deeply rooted, it's something we cannot help feeling. And for me, it's difficult because I cannot help feeling upset at sometimes, but I know it's relative. Have you ever felt like a bit upset about something, but you know that the other person might be a nice person, but maybe you just cannot interpret what they are doing? And it's rooted. We cannot choose not to feel it, which is very difficult. That's why inner cultural communication is so difficult, because it's not something we can, and we have to train ourselves not to feel these negative feelings. And when we consider people from different cultures impolite, we're actually creating. There is an E missing there. A stereotype. What does polite mean? Well, the theory by Brown and Levinson that I spoke about before has received a lot of critics because it's based on Anglo-Saxon culture, so mainly American and British. They didn't ask a Japanese person if the strategy based on positive face is better than the one on negative face. So basically, now there are more studies, and I recommend you read some studies by Japanese linguists, because they're very, very interesting. So the principles that I explained to you before are valid mainly for American culture and English culture, but not for other cultures, really. Okay, here you have bibliography, sorry. So these are the things that I used for this presentation. I want to show you a video, just to finish, about a British teacher. She's called Lynn Murphy, I think. And she speaks about the difference in complimenting between Americans and British people. So we're going to watch this. It's only 5 minutes. It's a TED conference. So I recommend you watch it. It's quite easy to find on YouTube. And yeah, so afterwards you can just give me your opinions, and let's see. Doesn't work. Does it work? Just okay. Let's see, because it worked yesterday. The other room. Yeah. Okay, it's not all the conference because it's quite long, so I've chosen just a part. And it's important that you remember the concept of face that I explained before. So negative face, positive face. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah.
Polite, who's sincere, what happens when we interact with each other, who's friendly. Okay, I'm going to look at two kinds of behaviors here to illustrate this: complimenting and thank you. So compliments, Americans give a lot of them, right? That's the other thing my English friends say to me. When they come back from America, they say, oh, everybody was so lovely, but after a while I just got sick of the insincerity. How could they really love everything that much? I got sick of the enthusiasm. Okay, because Americans are, they meet you, they say, oh, wow, I love your shoes, oh, I love your name, oh, I love your voice, I love your accent. So you get all of this all the time in American couplets. Well, why do Americans give a lot of compliments? It's because it's the easiest way to give people positive face, to say, I value something about you. So in a positive face exchanging culture, you need to do that a lot. If it's missing, you notice it, although you don't realize you're noticing it. So when I moved away from the US, at first I was teaching in South Africa, and I felt like everybody hated me. And I was convinced that my students had absolutely no time for me. And then at the end of the year, I got the student evaluations, and they were great. And that's when it sunk in. I was used to getting constant feedback from American students about what they liked, and I wasn't getting that in another culture. So really, sort of essential to your own sense of self to have that positive face float in this kind of culture. It's so important that we don't mess around with it, okay? So we don't go around saying things like, your eyes are like the stars that God made, or anything like that. 85% of American compliments are in one of 3 grammatical patterns. So it makes them really recognizable, makes them kind of, sort of repetitive, but there you are, they're there, we're doing them. Are they insincere? Well, they might be a bit exaggerated. We like to say love and things like that. We like to say awesome. But exaggeration is no less sincere than understatement, which, of course, the British are famous for, or irony, right? Irony and understatement, other ways of being insincere. So, there's a core truth, though. If I'm complimenting you on something, I mean that I like that something. If I say I like your shoes, I'm not just making it up. I like your shoes. And part of the reason why English friends will find this insincere is because they think, how can they like me? How can all this liking be going on all the time? How can they be so positive all the time? And the reason we can do that is because we compartmentalize people. If I tell you I like your shoes, right? Even if I like your idea, it doesn't mean I like you, okay? It means that I found something that we can have a sense of belonging about, that we can have a sense of valuing each other about, that we can progress in our communication from there. So, I've established some goodwill in our conversation. The other thing my English friends say to me is, we're so bad at accepting compliments. Well, it's not actually true. English people accept compliments more often than American people do, according to one study by Bob Herbert. So, and by accept I mean saying thank you, or acknowledging, agreeing with the compliment. Why English people don't like all these compliments is because they are an affront to privacy, right? If I tell you I like something about you, it means I noticed something about you, and that can feel invasive if you don't already know the person kind of well, if you don't have this sort of positive face openness. Okay, but Americans, and the British do this too, but what Herbert found was that the Americans do it at greater rates, will do something in responding to a compliment that involves not accepting the compliment. So I might give you a compliment back, I might downgrade what you complimented me on. Yeah, you might like these shoes, but they're really uncomfortable. Or I'll tell you how you could be like me and have this complimentable thing too. Oh, I got it at Asda. You can afford it too. So those sorts of things we do. Why? If it's about having positive faith, shouldn't I want positive things said about myself? Well, yes, I do. Here's why I get insincere. I do want you saying positive things about me. But once you've said something positive about me, you've put me on a pedestal. And our interaction has to be about equality. We all know we're not equal, but we have to act like we're equal, okay? And so once you've put me up on a pedestal, I have to take myself back down to the level I was at, or bring you up on the pedestal with me, okay, to keep that sense of equality going on, okay? So that's complimenting. I've got a few minutes more left.
All right, so I'm afraid the quality of the sound quality was not very good. Well, I hope you got what you said. Actually, is that why Americans compliment so much? How can they love everything under the sun and say awesome? And well, the reason is because in American culture, positive face is very, very important, and also that you are at the same level as the other person. So whereas British people, for example, might appreciate more their privacy, and if you compliment them on their hair, for example, I love your hair. It's like, but you don't know me, so you're kind of breaking my privacy. So how can you love my hair if we have just met, you know? So this is are Americans a bit fake? Not really. I mean, what's fake? So I based that judgment on what I think. So it's not fake if it is a way of interacting with others, and if it's something that is being codified, so to speak. So yep, so this is all, and yep. So I would glad to hear your comments. So any questions? Yes?
Thank you. Great talk, very interesting. You talked about can. I would say that's a particularly American way of approaching things. If somebody said that to me, my automatic reaction would be to think, yep, yes, you can. But of course, I'm far too polite to say that. But I always used to say it to my kids, because we would always say, may I? We're asking permission. We know we can. Yes. So, the Americans, I think, would say, can I get a cup of coffee? Well, yeah, of course you can. But we wouldn't say it.
So with the thing about asking with may I do something or may I have something, it is indirect, and so it has a level of politeness, but I also feel that if you say no, that's a more shocking answer. It almost doesn't leave room to say no. I don't know.
For example, may I borrow your pencil? Of course you don't say no. Say, I just need my pencil because I need to write. I'm really sorry about it. You don't say no. So you are saying no, aren't you? But you don't say no. Of course we don't say no when someone, no, I'm just being too, I'm focused on the Western, so Europe, and maybe you say no in a culture, I don't know. But not in Spanish or in English. I don't think you can say no to something unless the other person is not very nice and they have offended you somehow. But we say no all the time. We just don't realize that we are saying no. That's the thing, yeah.
Thank you. One thing that's interested me about expressing politeness in different languages is the use of negatively constructed questions and how this may create different impressions in different languages. Like, there's this famous example with Russian and English. Like, if a Russian phrase that literally translates to "girl, don't you know how to get to the library?" sounds very rude in English, but it's actually very polite in Russian. Well, I won't go into the girl part because I actually don't think that's an accurate translation. But the negative question, like to a Russian speaker, it means that you're not presuming that the person knows the information, let alone that they're under an obligation to share it with you. But asking like, "Do you know?" kind of puts the pressure on the person. But in English, it sounds like you're questioning the person's intelligence and accusing them of being stupid. So, did Brown and Levison write anything about negatively constructed questions or something as a way of reducing directness, or I don't know?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you give a negative question, you kind of give that freedom to the other person to say no, because you're just saying no. You're just actually asking about the possibility of getting a yes. For example, you don't speak Spanish, do you? You say you don't speak Spanish. You make it negative first, but then you give the option of saying yes, do you? So this is considered polite because actually you're not assuming that the other person speaks Spanish. So actually there is a structure I teach my students that is very difficult for Spanish speakers, which is you wouldn't happen to in English. For example, you wouldn't happen to know where the station is, would you? This is, first you make it negative, but then at the end of the sentence you make it positive. So you're kind of addressing the negative phase thing. When I say negative phase or positive phase, I'm not talking about something positive and negative in terms of moral, so to speak. So don't think that it's positive is better or negative. This is important to understand because positive is not better than negative. Yeah. Any other comments? Yeah.
One comment I always get when I'm teaching Dutch, especially from Americans or English people, is that they find Dutch people a little rude because we don't have a tendency to say please so often. And then I have to explain to them that in the Dutch language you don't say please, but you imply it by using little words in your sentence, or you change the tense a little bit. And please is only used when you're really, 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 really trying to beg for something. And this is something that I find very hard, because when I go abroad, I don't have a tendency to say please at all, and so people find it very brusque. Is there anything that you do about how you actually, when you're trying to make yourself a little less made out of stone, does the theory say something about that?
Yeah, actually, the usage of please is very relative, and is what I said before is you cannot judge somebody for because they're impolite because they didn't say please, because you don't know the way please is used. I'm going to give you an example that I have just remembered. There was a survey in an Australian university, I think, and the librarians were a bit upset because Chinese people never said thank you. It's like they're not nice at all. So because there are a lot of Chinese exchange students in I cannot remember what the city was, but the thing is that the linguistic department had like a little survey, and they discovered that in China you don't say please or thank you if it is a service. And I have spoken about this to my teacher as well. Or you might not use it all the time. Maybe you might say it in certain occasions. So Chinese people, if you give a service at a restaurant, it's because the other person is forced to, well, not forced, but I mean they are getting paid for that. So what's the point of saying thank you if it's not really something that they want to do? And I found it very clarifying. It's like, so they're not impolite. They just understand politeness in a different way. So the thing is that I'm an English teacher, and I need to learn British and American politeness because it's what I teach. But I'm aware of the fact that this is not something universal. And what I'm teaching is something English or American. It's not something that is... So to your question, since you're an English teacher, I think, as well, I think it's a good idea to read studies like this, for example, that describe how English people and American people interact. But it's quite complicated, actually. There's no easy answer to that. Yes?
Hi. As a English native speaker, British English native speaker who lives in Germany, which, like Dutch, has a very similar attitude to politeness. It's quite direct, but they do it through small words and things. It's just another comment that it kind of works the other way around, because sometimes it can come across that you're a bit absurd when you're doing the English politeness thing in a culture that doesn't do that. So, for example, my mother also lives in Germany, and our German family find it really strange when she asks to go to the bathroom in their house, because it's like, of course you can go to the bathroom, like nobody's going to stop you going to the bathroom because that would be disgusting and weird. So it's, yes, it can be that when you're a German or a Dutch person in that British or American environment, it might seem that you're quite a brusque. But the other way around, when you're doing the British English thing in a Germanic environment or a Dutch environment, probably, I don't know, then you can seem a bit absurd when you do the whole politeness thing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's so different. Now I have just remembered something that I did when I was at university, and we analyzed the way Colombian people say they're sorry, and the way Dutch people say they're sorry. And what it was actually discovered is that Colombian people give an excuse. For example, if they had to bring a report and they forgot it at home, they say, I'm really sorry, this morning I got up or my alarm clock didn't go off, and I was so nervous that I left my house and I just grabbed the first thing that I found and I forgot the report on the table. So it is not really their fault. It's the alarm clock's fault. You know what I mean? Whereas Dutch people kind of humiliate themselves. They say, I'm so stupid. Really, how can I have been such a, absent-minded person? And this is very clarifying as well. So in that culture, maybe saying you're sorry means kind of assuming the fault and not really humiliating yourself. It might be a bit strong to use that word, but yeah, it's completely different from Colombian people. So yeah, you take responsibility. Apparently Colombian people don't. So they talk about the bus, the traffic, whereas Dutch people say, I'm so stupid, really sorry, I'm not going to do it again. And then you said, you're not going to do it again. That's very interesting as well. Yeah. So any other questions? No time? All right. So yeah, thank you for coming for this first lecture on Sunday, sorry. So yeah, thank you.